My wife Emma and I had been married for 12 years, and I thought we were living the dream. We met in college, fell in love, and tied the knot shortly after graduation. We built a life together, supporting each other as careers and dreams. I worked as an engineer at a well-known firm, while Emma climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing agency. Despite our busy schedules, we always made time for each other. We had no children, which allowed us to travel frequently and enjoy spontaneous adventures. Emma was my rock, my confidant, and my best friend. We shared everything: our triumphs, our fears, our dreams. Weekends were our sacred time. We would hike, try new restaurants, or simply stay in and binge-watch our favorite shows. Our communication was open and honest, or so I believed. We had our occasional arguments like any couple, but we always managed to resolve them and come out stronger. However, a few months ago, I started to notice subtle changes in Emma's behavior. She became increasingly distracted and distant, often lost in her thoughts. Her late-night work sessions became more frequent, and she seemed to be on her phone more than usual. When I asked her about it, she dismissed my concerns, attributing her behavior to work stress and upcoming project deadlines. I wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling in the back of my mind kept telling me something was off. One evening, I decided to surprise Emma with her favorite takeout and some wine. As I walked into the house, I heard her laughing on the phone. Her tone was light and flirtatious, something I hadn't heard in a while. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call, her smile fading as she greeted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to that conversation than she was letting on. Over dinner, I tried to engage Emma in conversation, but she seemed preoccupied. I asked her about her day and she gave me vague, one-word answers. It was unlike her. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just a rough patch and that we would get through it. But as the weeks went by, the distance between us grew. One night, Emma came home later than usual. She looked exhausted and barely acknowledged me as she headed straight to the shower. I decided to check her phone, something I had never done before. It felt wrong, but my curiosity got the better of me. As I scrolled through her messages, I didn't find anything incriminating, but there were a lot of deleted conversations. My heart sank. The following weekend, Emma suggested we visit her parents, who lived a few hours away. It was a sudden decision, but I agreed, thinking it might help us reconnect. The trip was pleasant enough, but Emma remained distant. Her phone was always within reach, and she would often step outside to take calls, claiming they were work-related. One evening, as we sat on the porch, I noticed a car pulling up to the house. To my surprise, it was my brother Mike. He lived nearby and often visited Emma's parents, but his arrival felt oddly timed. He seemed just as surprised to see us, but his surprise quickly turned into discomfort. He barely made eye contact with me and seemed overly attentive to Emma. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't ignore the growing suspicion in my mind. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they painted was disturbing. Emma's sudden distance, her secretive behavior, and Mike's odd visit at all felt connected. But I couldn't bring myself to confront them without concrete evidence. I decided to play it cool and keep a closer eye on Emma and Mike. Maybe it was all just a coincidence, and I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. The trust I had in my wife and my brother was starting to crumble, and I feared what I might discover if I kept digging. As we drove back home from her parents' place, I glanced at Emma. She was staring out the window, lost in thought. The woman I loved and trusted with my life seemed like a stranger, and I didn't know how to bridge the growing chasm between us. All I knew was that I needed to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. A few weeks after our trip to Emma's parents, the gnawing suspicion about her behavior didn't fade. Instead, it grew stronger. Emma's late nights at work became a regular occurrence, and she was often too tired to talk or spend time together when she got home. I began to worry that there might be someone else in her life, someone at her office. I felt guilty even thinking about it. Emma had always been a hard-working woman, dedicated to her job, but the changes in her behavior were undeniable. The thought of her cheating on me with my brother seemed too far-fetched, too painful to consider seriously. How could I think that of Mike? No, it had to be someone else, someone at her workplace. One evening I decided to confront her. I needed to know what was going on. When she finally walked through the door, I was waiting in the living room. She looked startled to see me sitting there, not engrossed in my usual TV show. "Hey, Jack," she said, her tone indifferent. "Why are you just sitting here in the dark?" "I wanted to talk to you, Emma," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've been working late a lot lately. Is everything okay?" Emma sighed, rolling her eyes as she dropped her bag on the couch. "I've told you, Jack. There's a big project at work. It's demanding a lot of my time. Why are you always so paranoid?" "I'm not being paranoid," I said, feeling a surge of frustration. "I just feel like you are not being honest with me. I see how distracted you are, how you are always on your phone. Is there something you're not telling me?" She scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "Oh, come on, Jack. You are overreacting. It is just work. Not everything is about you, you know?" I clenched my fists, trying to remain calm. "It's not just about me, Emma. It's about us. Our marriage? I feel like I'm losing you." "You're not losing me," she snapped. "You're just being insecure. Maybe if you trusted me a little more, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Her dismissive attitude made my blood boil. "Emma, I love you, I trust you, but something has changed, and I can't ignore it. Are you seeing someone else?" The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you serious right now? How dare you accuse me of something like that?" "I have to ask," I said, my voice shaking, "because I can keep living like this, constantly wondering what's going on. If there's nothing, then just tell me." She shook her head, laughing bitterly. "You are unbelievable, Jack. You want the truth? Fine. There's no one else. I'm just tired of you always breathing down my neck, always needing reassurance. Maybe if you had a little more confidence, you wouldn't be so paranoid." Her words cut deep, but I refused to back down. "I just want to understand, Emma. Why are you so distant?" "Because I am exhausted," she yelled, her face contorted with frustration. "I am tired of having to explain myself to you. I am tired of your insecurities. Maybe if you focused more on your own life instead of obsessing over mine, we wouldn't be in this mess." I felt a lump forming in my throat, a mixture of anger and sadness. "I am trying to save our marriage, Emma, but you have to meet me halfway." She glared at me, her eyes cold. "Maybe if you were a little less needy and a little more supportive, I wouldn't feel so suffocated. I am done with this conversation. I am going to bed." With that, she stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there for a long time, replaying our argument in my head. Emma's denial felt hollow, her anger disproportionate. If there was truly nothing going on, why was she so defensive? The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that something was indeed wrong. But my gut told me it wasn't just about work. Her behavior was too erratic, too secretive. Yet, I couldn't shake the guilt of suspecting my own brother. Mike had always been there for me, and I didn't want to believe he could betray me like that. For now, I decided to keep a closer eye on Emma and her interactions at work. Maybe I could find out more about this mysterious colleague she seemed so engrossed with. I needed proof, something concrete to confirm or dispel my fears. Until then, I would continue to play the role of the supportive husband, even as my heart ached with doubt and suspicion. The days that followed our argument were tense and filled with an unsettling silence. Emma and I barely spoke, our interactions reduced to basic pleasantries. Determined to find out the truth, I decided to follow her after work. If she was indeed seeing someone, I needed to know. I began leaving work early, parking my car discreetly near her office. I watched as she left the building, always looking tired and preoccupied. Each time I tailed her, careful to keep my distance. To my frustration, she always drove straight home or stopped by a grocery store or cafe. There were no secret meetings, no clandestine rendezvous. One Friday evening, I followed her to a bar. My heart pounded as I watched her enter, hoping to catch her meeting with someone. I waited in my car, eyes glued to the entrance. An hour passed, then two. Finally, she emerged alone, looking even more exhausted. She drove home without incident, and I felt a pang of guilt for doubting her. Despite my efforts, I found nothing to substantiate my suspicions. Emma's behavior remained the same, distant and cold, but there were no signs of an affair. I started to wonder if I was the problem, if my paranoia was driving a wedge between us. One night, as we lay in bed, I decided to confront her again, but this time with an apology. I needed to clear the air, to atone for my mistrust. "Emma," I began softly, turning to face her. "Can we talk for a minute?" She sighed, clearly weary. "What is it, Jack?" "I owe you an apology," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I have been acting paranoid and insecure, and I have been following you after work. I thought there might be someone else, but I was wrong. I'm sorry for doubting you." Emma's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with anger. "You followed me? How could you do that, Jack? Don't you trust me at all?" "I know it was wrong," I admitted, feeling the weight of my guilt. "But I was desperate to find out what was going on. Your behavior has been so different lately, and I didn't know what to think." She sat up, crossing her arms. "So you decided to stalk me instead of just talking to me? That is a real show of trust, Jack." "I'm sorry," I repeated, my voice cracking. "I just wanted to understand. I love you, Emma, and I don't want to lose you." Emma shook her head, her expression a mix of hurt and frustration. "You've got a funny way of showing it. Maybe if you spent less time snooping around and more time supporting me, we wouldn't be having these problems." "I know," I said, swallowing hard. "I want to make things right. I promise I won't do anything like that again. Can we try to move past this?" She sighed deeply, rubbing her temples. "I don't know, Jack. You've broken my trust, too. This isn't something that can just be fixed overnight." "I understand," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "But I want to try. I want to be better for you, for us." Emma was silent for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Okay, but you need to give me some space. Let me handle my work, and stop questioning everything I do. If you can do that, we don't stand a chance." "I can do that," I assured her, even as doubt gnawed at my insides. "I just want us to be okay again." "Me too," she said quietly, lying back down and turning away from me. "But it's going to take time." As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. I had confessed my suspicions and apologized, but the distance between us remained. I had no choice but to trust her and hope that in time we could rebuild what was broken. Yet, a small part of me couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Emma's behavior than met the eye. As our anniversary approached, I decided to make a grand gesture to rekindle the warmth between Emma and me. We had been through a rough patch, and I wanted to show her that I was committed to making things right. I planned to return home early from work to prepare a festive dinner for just the two of us, a romantic surprise to celebrate our 12 years of marriage. That day, I left work at noon, my heart light with anticipation. I picked up Emma's favorite wine, a bouquet of red roses, and ingredients for a gourmet meal. I couldn't wait to see the look of surprise and joy on her face when she walked through the door to find the house beautifully decorated and the table set for a special evening. As I approached our house, I noticed that Emma's car was already in the driveway. My heart skipped a beat, hoping she hadn't spoiled the surprise by coming home early herself. I parked the car quietly on the street and walked towards the front door, juggling the bags and flowers in my hands. Just as I reached the porch, I heard a noise from inside the house. At first, I thought it was the television, but as I listened closer, I realized it was something else, something that made my blood run cold. The sounds were not screams, but moans. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I set the bags and flowers down gently and crept towards the front window, my breath shallow and my hands trembling. The curtains were slightly parted, giving me a narrow view of the living room. What I saw next shattered my world. There on our couch was Emma. She was tangled up in a passionate embrace with someone who was not me. The sight of her bare skin, the familiar curve of her body, and the unmistakable sounds of pleasure filled me with a mix of disbelief and rage. My vision blurred as I tried to see who was with her, but their faces were hidden from my view. I took a step back, my legs feeling like jelly. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted and fought to keep, was cheating on me. And not just with anyone, but with someone she had brought into our home, onto the very couch where we had shared countless intimate moments. Desperate to know the identity of the man who had invaded my life, I moved silently around the side of the house, peering through the next window. My heart pounded louder than ever, each beat echoing in my ears. As I finally got a clear view, my worst nightmare unfolded before me. It wasn't a colleague or a stranger. It was Mike, my own brother. The world around me seemed to spin as I stood there, watching in horror as the two people I trusted most in this world betrayed me in the worst possible way. I felt like I was suffocating, my breath caught in my throat, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Unable to bear it any longer, I stumbled back to the front of the house, grabbing the bags and flowers. I needed to get out of there before my rage and hurt drove me to do something I would regret. I threw everything into the car and drove away, my vision blurred with tears, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. This was supposed to be our special day, a celebration of our love and commitment. Instead, it had turned into a living nightmare. My wife, my brother, the two people I loved and trusted most, had shattered my world. As I drove aimlessly, the reality of what I had witnessed began to sink in. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, rage, and profound sorrow all churned within me, leaving me numb and disoriented. Eventually, as dusk began to settle, I knew I had to go back home. I had to confront Emma and get answers, no matter how painful it would be. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I noticed Mike's car was gone. A mix of relief and dread filled me as I approached the front door. The house was eerily silent as I stepped inside, the festive dinner I had planned now a distant memory. My footsteps echoed through the hallway as I walked towards the living room, the scene of my earlier heartbreak. Emma was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. For a moment we just stared at each other, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. "Jack," she began, but I cut her off. "Dante," I said, my voice trembling with barely controlled anger. "Dante, you dare try to explain this away." She stood up, her hands shaking. "I am so sorry, Jack. I never meant for you to find out like this." My rage flared up. "You never meant for me to find out? That's what you're sorry about? Not the fact that you betrayed me with my own brother?" Emma flinched at my words, tears streaming down her face. "It's not what you think. It just happened. I didn't plan it." "Oh, it just happened," I shouted, unable to hold back any longer. "You accidentally ended up naked with my brother in our living room? How long, Emma? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes filled with guilt. "A few months. But Jack, it didn't mean anything. I still love you." "Love?" I laughed bitterly. "You call this love? Sneaking around behind my back, lying to me, making a fool out of me? How could you do this to us?" Emma took a step towards me, her hands outstretched. "Jack, please. I know I made a mistake. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling, try to fix things." "Fix things?" I shook my head in disbelief. "There's nothing left to fix, Emma. You destroyed everything. I can even look at you without feeling sick." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry." I felt a pang of sorrow mixed with my anger, but I knew there was no going back. The trust between us was shattered beyond repair. "It's over, Emma. We redone." The finality of my words seemed to hit her like a physical blow. She crumpled onto the couch, her sobs filling the room. I stood there, my heart breaking, but knowing this was the only way forward. We couldn't continue living a lie. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight," I said quietly, turning to leave. "We'll talk about the divorce tomorrow." As I walked out the door, the weight of the situation crashed down on me. The woman I had loved for 12 years, the one I had shared my life and dreams with, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. And my own brother, my flesh and blood, had been complicit in that betrayal. I drove to the nearest hotel, checked in, and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The memories of our life together played in my mind like a cruel montage. The laughter, the shared secrets, the plans for the future, all of it now tainted by her infidelity. I tried to understand how it had come to this. Had I missed the signs? Had I been too focused on my own insecurities to see the truth? The questions tormented me, each one more painful than the last. I thought of Mike, and a fresh wave of anger surged through me. How could he do this to me? To us? The bond we shared was now irreparably broken. Sleep eluded me as I grappled with my emotions. I felt hollow, like a part of me had been ripped away. The future seemed bleak and uncertain, the love and trust I had once cherished now gone. I had no idea how I would move on from this, but I knew I had to. For my own sanity, I had to let go of the past and face the painful reality of the present. As dawn broke, I felt a grim resolve settle over me. Today, I would start the process of ending my marriage. It was the only way to reclaim my life, to begin healing from the deep wounds of betrayal. It would be a long and painful journey, but I had no choice. Emma and I were finished, and there was no turning back. The days following my decision to divorce Emma were a blur of pain and confusion. I barely slept, and when I did, I was haunted by images of her and Mike together. The betrayal was like a constant gnawing ache in my chest. I knew that I had to take action, to move forward, but the thought of confronting Emma and my brother again was almost too much to bear. I contacted a divorce lawyer and set up a meeting. As I walked into the law office, the weight of the situation settled heavily on my shoulders. The lawyer, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Margaret, listened patiently as I explained everything that had happened. Her calm, professional demeanor was a small comfort amidst the turmoil. "We'll start by filing the initial divorce papers," Margaret said, her pen poised over her legal pad. "Given the circumstances, we can argue for a favorable settlement. Have you and Emma discussed any terms?" I shook my head. "We haven't spoken since I left. She knows it's over, but we haven't discussed any details." Margaret nodded, her expression sympathetic. "That's understandable. This is a difficult time. We'll handle the paperwork and get everything in motion. You'll need to serve her the papers, or we can arrange for a process server if you prefer." "I'll do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I owe her that much." The next few days were a whirlwind of legal documents and meetings. I barely saw Emma, and when I did, it was like looking at a stranger. The woman I had loved and trusted for 12 years was now someone I could barely stand to be in the same room with. The day I served her the divorce papers was one of the hardest of my life. I returned to the house in the afternoon, my hands shaking as I held the envelope. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mix of fear and sadness. "Jack," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Please, can we talk about this?" I set the envelope on the table in front of her. "There's nothing left to talk about, Emma. It's over." She stared at the envelope, tears streaming down her face. "I know I hurt you, Jack, but can we at least try to work things out? For the sake of our history? For everything we've been through?" I felt a surge of anger and sorrow. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me with my own brother. This isn't something we can just move past." She reached out, her hand trembling. "Jack," I stepped back, cutting her off. "Just sign the papers, Emma. It's the only way we can both start to heal." The court process was grueling. Each hearing was like reopening the wound, exposing the raw pain and betrayal all over again. Emma and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, barely acknowledging each other. Our lawyers handled most of the discussions, but the tension between us was palpable. Seeing her was a constant reminder of everything I had lost. The love we once shared was now a bitter memory, tainted by her infidelity. I couldn't help but wonder how things had gone so wrong, how the woman I had vowed to spend my life with had become a stranger. My thoughts were often consumed with worry for our children. Though Emma and I didn't have any together, I couldn't help but think about my future, my dreams of being a father, and how they now seemed so distant and uncertain. The betrayal had left me questioning everything, including my own ability to trust again. As for my brother, I cut off all contact with him. Mike tried to reach out several times, leaving voicemails and sending messages, but I deleted them all without listening. The pain of his betrayal was too deep, too raw. I couldn't face him, couldn't bear the thought of hearing his excuses or apologies. Our bond was shattered, and I doubted it could ever be repaired. The court proceedings dragged on for months, each hearing a fresh ordeal. We fought over the division of assets, the house and the car. Every discussion felt like a battle, each concession a painful reminder of what I had lost. Emma's lawyer tried to argue for a larger share of our assets, but Margaret fought back fiercely, ensuring that I received a fair settlement. Throughout the process, I tried to focus on my work, throwing myself into projects to distract from the emotional turmoil. But it was hard to concentrate, hard to find any joy in the things I once loved. My colleagues noticed the change in me, offering support and sympathy, but I often brushed them off. I didn't want their pity, I just wanted my life back. The final court hearing was the hardest. The judge reviewed the settlement, asking if we had any final objections. Emma and I sat in silence, our lawyers doing most of the talking. When the judge finally declared our divorce final, it felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders, but it also felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The marriage that had once been the center of my life was now officially over. The future seemed uncertain and daunting, but at least I could begin to move forward, to start the long process of healing. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild my life. I moved into a new apartment, trying to create a space that felt like mine. I focused on my work, my friends, and the hobbies I had neglected. It wasn't easy, and there were many nights when the loneliness and pain felt overwhelming. But slowly, I began to find moments of peace, glimpses of hope. I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and the trust I had once taken for granted was now fragile and tentative. But I also knew that I couldn't let the past define my future. I had to keep moving forward, one step at a time, and hope that, eventually, I would find happiness again. And so, I began the journey of rebuilding my life, determined to find strength in my pain, and to create a future that was brighter and better than the past I had left behind. Months passed after the finalization of the divorce, and I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. The initial stages were tough, filled with sleepless nights and an aching emptiness, but as time went on, I found myself slowly healing. My new apartment, once a place of solitude, gradually became a space of comfort and renewal. It was during a company event that I met Laura. She was a project manager from a different department, someone I had seen around the office but never had the chance to interact with. We were paired up for a team-building exercise, and her warm smile and easy laughter immediately put me at ease. We started talking, first about work and then about our personal lives. Laura had been through a rough divorce herself, and we bonded over our shared experiences of heartbreak and betrayal. She was kind, understanding, and most importantly, she made me feel alive again. Our friendship quickly blossomed into something more. We began dating, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. Laura was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that life could still hold joy and love despite the pain of the past. She encouraged me to pursue my hobbies, to reconnect with friends, and to embrace the future with hope. As my relationship with Laura grew stronger, so did my resolve to move on from Emma and Mike. However, the past has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. One Saturday afternoon, Laura and I decided to visit a local farmer's market. We were strolling hand in hand, enjoying the crisp autumn air, when I spotted Emma across the crowd. She was with a group of friends laughing and chatting, seemingly carefree. My heart sank and a wave of nausea hit me. Laura noticed the change in my demeanor. "Jack, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just saw someone I used to know." Emma's eyes met mine for a brief moment. She froze, her smile fading as our gazes locked. I quickly looked away, not wanting to acknowledge the flood of emotions that seeing her had stirred up. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze. Laura tried to cheer me up, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The encounter with Emma had reopened old wounds, and I felt like I was back at square one, grappling with the pain of betrayal and loss all over again. That evening, I decided to reach out to Mike. We hadn't spoken since the divorce, and the unresolved tension between us weighed heavily on my mind. I sent him a message, suggesting we meet for a drink and talk things over. To my surprise, he agreed. We met at a quiet bar, the air thick with awkwardness as we sat down. Mike looked older, more worn out than I remembered. The betrayal had taken its toll on both of us. "Jack," he began, his voice hesitant, "I am really sorry for everything. I know I can undo what I did, but I want to try and make amends." I took a deep breath, the anger and hurt bubbling beneath the surface. "Mike, what you and Emma did was unforgivable, but you're still my brother. I can just erase you from my life. I am willing to try and move forward, but things will never be the same." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand. I miss you, man. I miss the way things used to be." We talked for hours, sharing stories and reminiscing about our childhood. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt like a step in the right direction. The bond we once had was fractured, but there was a sliver of hope that we could rebuild it, even if it would never be as strong as before. As I left the bar, I felt a strange sense of relief. Reconnecting with Mike was bittersweet, but it was a necessary step in my healing process. The encounter with Emma had reminded me that the past would always be a part of me, but it didn't have to define my future. Laura was waiting for me when I got home, her smile a beacon of warmth and love. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling grateful for the second chance at happiness she had given me. Life was far from perfect, and the scars of betrayal would always linger. But with Laura by my side and a tentative truce with Mike, I felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. Healing was a journey, and I was finally moving forward, one step at a time. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much has changed over the past year. When I discovered Emma's betrayal with my own brother, I thought my world had ended. The pain was unbearable, and the future seemed bleak. But life has a way of surprising you, of offering new paths even when you feel lost. Meeting Laura was the turning point for me. She brought light into my life when all I could see was darkness. Her kindness, patience, and understanding helped me heal in ways I never thought possible. She showed me that love could be pure and untainted, that happiness was still within reach. With her, I found the strength to rebuild my life, to believe in love again. Reconnecting with Mike was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The bond we once shared was deeply scarred, and it will never be the same. But we've found a way to move forward, to acknowledge our mistakes, and attempt to mend the broken pieces. It is not perfect, and it never will be, but it's a start. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, and I am learning to navigate it one step at a time. Seeing Emma still brings a pang of pain, a reminder of the trust that was shattered. Yet I've come to realize that holding on to anger only harms me. Letting go is not about forgetting or condoning what happened. It's about freeing myself from the chains of the past. I wish her well, but I no longer need her presence in my life to find closure. As I move forward, I am grateful for the lessons I have learned. I have discovered resilience within myself that I didn't know existed. I have learned the value of true love, the kind that lifts you up and supports you, rather than tearing you down. Laura and I are building something beautiful together, and I cherish every moment with her. Healing is not a linear process. There are still days when the past creeps up on me, when the memories of betrayal sting anew. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. I'm learning to focus on the present, to embrace the joy and love that surrounds me now. Life will always have its challenges, its moments of pain and sorrow, but it also holds the promise of new beginnings, of unexpected joys, and the possibility of healing. My journey has been a testament to that. I'm not the same person I was a year ago, and for that, I am grateful. To anyone going through a similar experience, know that there is hope. It may seem impossible now, but healing is possible. Love is possible. Happiness is possible. You just have to take it one day at a time, trust in yourself, and be open to the unexpected gifts life can offer. As I look towards the future with Laura by my side, I feel a sense of peace. The past will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I'm stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever comes next. And for the first time in a long time, I'm truly hopeful.